What happened last night in Washington, D.C., by all appearances, and we should definitely wait for more investigations and for facts to unfold, because often things aren't what they appear to be in the first day or week. But by all appearances, it seems as though somebody very committed to the cause of protesting the Israeli destruction of Gaza, the Israeli ethnic cleansing in Gaza, the Israeli genocide in Gaza, decided that even though the world is starting to realize what's going on, even though the U.S. government itself understands that the population is turning against it, that there's simply nothing that will be done to stop the slaughter of Palestinians by Israel. And he therefore decided, based on some very twisted moral reasoning, that he thought it was justified and helpful to go and just randomly gun down two young Americans with ties to Israel, though he presumably didn't even know they had ties to Israel at the time that he did it. And one of the victims, the female victim, and it was a couple that was going to be engaged when they went to Israel next week, she was actually somebody who was Jewish, grew up in a Jewish family, had very strong ties to Israel, had often gone there. But when she would go there, she would work with the groups that try and bridge gaps between Israelis and Palestinians, to kind of create dialogue between the two, to try and encourage peaceful coexistence. And her soon-to-be husband was somewhat more fanatical in his support for the IDF. His social media stream shows a long list of just kind of retweeting Netanyahu and IDF. He himself made a claim that there's no real famine in Gaza, that it's a lie against Israel. He is someone who was born to a mixed family. His father is Jewish and was born in Israel. He was born in Israel, but his mother is Christian. So his parents are of mixed religions, and he himself is a Christian and identifies as a strong Christian Zionist. He's been to Israel many times. He was born there. His parents live there. So that's who they are. But obviously the person who shot them probably knew nothing about anything that defined their lives or who they were. Here from the New York Times, describing all of this today: suspect charged with murder in the killing of two embassy aides. The suspect in the shooting deaths of two Israel embassy employees in Washington, and they did work for the Israeli embassy, was charged with first-degree murder and other crimes on Thursday, according to an FBI affidavit filed in federal court hours after federal agents in tactical gear descended on his Chicago home. The suspect, Elias Rodriguez, 31, told police officers, quote, "I did it for Palestine, I did it for Gaza," when he was taken into custody Wednesday night after the shooting, according to the affidavit filed in the U.S. District Court in Washington. Janine Pirro, Judge Janine, the interim U.S. attorney in Washington, said her office was investigating the shooting as a hate crime and as a crime of terrorism. Quote, "We will add additional charges as the evidence warrants," she said at a news conference, adding that the authorities were reviewing, quote, "massive amounts of evidence and had not decided whether to pursue the death penalty." I put my money on the death penalty, given the victims. The close-range shooting of the embassy workers occurred shortly after 9 p.m. Eastern Time Wednesday on a street outside the Capitol Jewish Museum, where the American Jewish Committee was holding a reception for young diplomats. The area is the heart of official Washington, packed with federal buildings, embassies, and museums. The two people killed in the attack were a couple, Yaron Lashinsky, 30, who grew up in Israel and Germany, and Sarah Milgram, 26, who was from Kansas. As Ms. Milgram tried to crawl away from the gunman, he followed her and fired several more times, the FBI affidavit says. Here's a video of the alleged killer, who was peacefully subdued. He didn't really try and resist or get away. But this is what he did when he knew cameras were watching and the police arrested him. I don't know. I found that a little bit odd behavior. I suppose if you're killing people in a cause, you do want to use whatever platform you have to promote that cause, and that's what he did. At the same time, he waited for the cameras to be there, and he took this phrase, "Free Palestine," that is the most common chant of people who oppose the Israeli destruction of Gaza, and in public clearly linked it to the murders he had just committed, automatically, in a lot of people's eyes, dirtying that phrase as though that phrase now is somehow, or people who say it are somehow responsible for his murderous acts. The accused killer left a manifesto And a lot of times these manifestos left by these kind of killers are very frantic, very kind of rambling, evidence of a lot of mental health or instability. This manifesto is actually quite cogent. It's well written. It tries to construct a moral argument for why these murders are justified. Not one that I accept, but it is a document written by someone who seems to be writing and thinking and expressing themselves clearly, whatever immorality the act is defined by. Here's part of what it says. The Embassy Shooter Manifesto, and this was published by Ken Klippenstein. I think he was the first person to publish it who got it. And it's been confirmed as well. It's a 900-word document that cites Gaza as his motive. And this is what he said, quote, Halantar is a word that means something like thunder or lightning. In the wake of an act, people look for a text to fix its meaning. So here's an attempt. The atrocities committed by Israelis against Palestinians defy description and defy quantification. Instead of reading descriptions, mostly we watch them unfold on videos, sometimes live. After a few months of rapidly mounting death tolls, Israel has obliterated the capacity to even continue counting the dead, which has served its genocide well. At the time of writing, the Gaza Health Ministry records 53,000 killed by traumatic force, at least 10,000 lie under rubble, and who knows how many more thousands more dead of preventable disease, hunger, with tens of thousands now at risk of imminent famine due to the Israeli blockade, all enabled by Western and Arab government complicity. Public opinion has shifted against the genocidal apartheid state, and the American government has simply shrugged. They'll do what without public opinion then, criminalize it where they can, suffocate it with bland reassurances that they're doing all they can to restrain Israel, while it cannot criminalize protest, where it cannot criminalize protest outright. Aaron Bushnell, who, as you might remember, is the person who incinerated himself in front of the White House to protest the U.S. support for Israel's war in Gaza, and others sacrificed themselves in the hopes of stopping the massacre, and the state works to make us feel their sacrifice was made in vain, that there's no hope in escalating for Gaza and no point in bringing the war home. We can't let them succeed. Their sacrifices were not made in vain. Those of us against the genocide take satisfaction in arguing that the perpetrators and abettors have forfeited their humanity. I sympathize with this viewpoint and understand its value in soothing the psyche, which cannot bear to accept the atrocities it witnesses, even mediated through the screen. But inhumanity has long since shown itself to be shockingly common, mundane, prosaically human. A perpetrator may then be a loving parent, a filled child, a generous and charitable friend, an amiable stranger capable of moral strength at times when it suits him, and sometimes even when it does not, and yet be a monster all the same time. Humanity doesn't exempt one from accountability. The action would have been greatly morally justified taken 11 years ago during Protective Edge. That was the Israeli attack on Gaza in 2014 under Obama that he supported and armed, that killed thousands of Palestinian civilians. He says that would have been justified during Protective Edge, around the time I personally became aware of our brutal conduct in Palestine. But I think to most Americans, such an action would have been illegible, would seem insane. I am glad that today, at least, there are many Americans for which the action will be highly legible, and in some funny way, the only sane thing to do. I love you, Mom, Dad, baby, sis, the rest of my family, including you. Oh, free Palestine, Elias Rodriguez. Now, let me just say something about the moral framework at play, at least in my view here. And I talked about this after October 7th as well. There is a notion, there is a idea that the Western world itself embraces, that if you decide people are engaged in violence and murder and destruction to a sufficient extent, you have the right to go and use violence against them to kill them. We've done that all around the world. We bombed wedding parties and multiple different countries, and then we justified it on the ground. Oh, there was some bad guy there. We were doing it up until recently in Yemen, killing huge numbers of civilians to say, oh, there was some Houthi among them that is a terrorist that's doing bad things. And obviously the Israelis are doing that to an unprecedented extent in Gaza. They think there's anybody remotely displeasing to the Israeli government, and they'll just take out an entire refugee camp or burn people to death in tents, blow up hospitals and schools and mosques and UN shelters in order to kill them. So this is not a standard, the idea that you can go and use violence against people who are using violence as well. Wars are based on this, assassinations are based on this, all of which the West has done. But if you're going to do something like this, if you're going to say, okay, I believe that the war in Gaza is not really even a war. The destruction of Gaza by this extremely powerful army backed by the world's richest and most powerful country has gotten to the point so severely. Let's say you're, someone in 1942 and you're aware of the Holocaust and you say, like, I have to go do something. I have to target a German general or a German leader who's responsible for this. And there were assassination attempts on Adolf Hitler. And there were Nazis who were murdered. And we look back on those as noble and just. You can imagine reaching a certain point. I'm not even saying that whether or not that point has been reached here, where you say, okay, I think violence is justified. But you don't go and just randomly, arbitrarily pick out 2 young civilians who don't work in the military, who aren't in fighting in Gaza, who have no power or influence or policy. It's a very softball and pointless and counterproductive and I think immoral way to carry out this notion that sometimes violence is justified to stop worse violence. It's strategically self-destructive for sure, but way worse than that. I think it's just inherently immoral. I thought one of the things that the murder of the CEO of that large healthcare company by Luigi would have taught. What's that? Yeah, United Healthcare. It's such a generic name. It's on my mind. When Luigi killed the CEO of United Healthcare in protest of a healthcare system and an insurance scheme that most people believe are inhumane. You pay premiums, and then when you finally actually need the coverage, they find all kinds of ways to deny it, making huge amounts of money off sick people who are in desperate need of health care and denying it all the time. He didn't go and just wait outside the building and just kill people who randomly walked out, like receptionists or, HR people or bookkeepers. He planned and for a long time and came up with a scheme to kill the CEO. So you're actually using violence against somebody who's actually responsible for the crimes and violence that you believe is being imposed. And this idea of just going and randomly killing people who you have no idea who these people are, or even if you do, they're low-level Israeli staffers, there's nothing, absolutely no moral justification for that kind of violence. And predictably, it's being used, and it's so predictable, and being exploited to try and demonize and even criminalize the pro-Palestinian movement, the movement against the Israeli war in Gaza. Nonetheless, he did lay out a clear framework. He was obviously thinking clearly. There's always the possibility that of a false flag or whatever. This is always something that should be investigated. There's nothing you could do to guarantee a weakening or an attack on the anti-war, anti-Israel movement than going and just randomly shooting to a couple in their 20s in cold blood, pumping bullets into someone's head while they're crawling away, and then screaming free Palestine, then this. But, usually it's Occam's razor, and I'm sure there are people who believe in violence against Israelis or people who work for the Israeli government. And so that seems to have been what this is. And I think, obviously, the person responsible for this violence, for these deaths, for this murder, is the person who went and pulled the trigger. Thanks for watching this clip from System Update, our live show that airs every Monday through Friday at 7 p.m. Eastern, exclusively on Rumble. You can catch the full nightly shows live or view the backlog of episodes for free on our Rumble page. You can also find full episodes the morning after they air across all major podcasting platforms, including Spotify and Apple. All the information you need is linked below. We hope to see you there.